My name is Dale Pruitt, and in 1997 I was running a one-man locksmith operation out of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. You know the type. Magnetic signs on the truck doors, a pager on my belt, and a standing contract with 3 county banks to handle their repossession and foreclosure work. That last part is what paid the bills in lean months. Banks would hand me an address and a lockbox code. I'd go out, rekey the locks, change the deadbolts, and leave a notice on the kitchen table. Simple enough, except for the part where you're walking into someone's whole life and locking them out of it. The Harmon property on County Road G came to me on a Tuesday morning in late October. My dispatch sheet said the foreclosure had closed the week before. The previous owners, a couple named Gerald and Linda Harmon, had vacated, and the bank needed the property secured before a Thursday inspection. Standard stuff. The place was about 11 miles outside of town, past the Kowalski Dairy, past a long, flat stretch of cornfields that had already been combined down to stubble. I pulled off County G around 9 in the morning and parked in the gravel drive. The house was a 2-story white farmhouse, the kind that Wisconsin grows like a crop. Detached garage, a rusted propane tank along the west side, a big white silo across the access road that hadn't been used in years by the look of it. The lawn was the first thing I noticed. Not because anything was wrong with it, but because it was wrong in a way I couldn't immediately name. It was mid-October. We'd had frost 2 nights running, but the grass around the house was freshly cut, not overgrown, and then mowed down. Cut recently, cut evenly, in neat east-west rows the way a man cuts who's been cutting the same lawn for 20 years and doesn't have to think about it anymore. I stood by my truck and looked at it for a moment. The bank sheet said the property had been vacant for 8 days. I told myself a neighbor had come over. People do that in farm country. You look out for the land even after the family's gone. I grabbed my toolbox and went to work. The front door lock took me about 12 minutes. I bagged the old hardware, installed a Schlager B60N, tested it twice, and went inside to do the walk through the bank required. Confirm no personal property left behind. Note any damage. The house smelled the way vacant houses always smell in October. Dust, a little mildew, something faintly sweet that turns out to be mouse bait under the sink. I went room to room with my clipboard. Living room clear. Kitchen clear. Dishes gone. Appliances left. A ring of coffee stains on the counter that nobody had wiped up when they left. I remember thinking that was the saddest thing. Not the empty walls, not the bare floors. The coffee ring they didn't clean up. I was coming back downstairs after checking the bedrooms when I heard it. A low sound from outside, rhythmic, mechanical. It took me a second to place it. A lawnmower. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. A man was mowing the lawn. He was maybe 50 feet from the house, pushing a green walk-behind mower in that same east-west pattern I'd noticed in front. Average height, wearing a brown canvas work coat and a blaze orange knit cap. He had his back to me and was moving away toward the property line. The backyard was already cut. He was going over it a second time. I went to the back door and opened it. The cold air and the mower noise hit me at the same time. I called out, "Hey there, hey sir!" He didn't turn. The mower was loud. I figured he hadn't heard me. I walked down the 2 back steps and into the yard and called again, louder. He still didn't turn. I walked another 10 yards toward him and stopped. Something made me stop. I still don't have a clean reason for it. Something about the way his shoulders were set. Not the posture of a man doing a chore. Something rigid, committed. I called out one more time, and he turned around to look at me. His face was Gerald Harmon's face. I didn't know Gerald Harmon. I'd never seen Gerald Harmon. But I knew exactly who he was, the same way you sometimes know things in a dream, before anyone tells you. Later, when I described him to the bank officer, she went pale and pulled out the file. The photo on the foreclosure notice matched what I described to the inch. He looked at me. He didn't speak. His eyes were open, and he was looking directly at me. And then he turned back around and kept mowing. I walked back into the house, locked the back door, wrote a note on my clipboard, unauthorized individual on property, and tried the neighbor I'd seen a quarter-mile back on the road in, a dairy operation with a Quonset barn. I drove over there because I had no cell phone and the farmhouse landline had been disconnected. The neighbor, a man named Paul Cherwinski, met me in his driveway. I told him I'd found someone mowing the Harmon property who matched Gerald Harmon's description, and asked if Gerald had maybe come back to do some last work on the place. Paul looked at me for a long moment, with an expression I didn't understand at the time. He told me Gerald Harmon had died of a heart attack 9 days ago, in his own backyard. 2 days before the bank officially closed the foreclosure, he'd been mowing. The coroner said he'd been gone probably 4 hours before Linda found him. She'd left to stay with her sister in Oshkosh and never went back for their things. I said, "Sir, there is a man on that property right now, mowing the lawn." Paul said, "I can see the Harmon place from my kitchen window. I've been watching it all morning. There's nobody out there." We drove back together. The mower was sitting in the middle of the backyard, engine off, no one behind it. The grass was cut. Both of us saw that. Both of us walked the perimeter of the property in the cold and found no one. Paul said the mower was Gerald's. He recognized it. A Toro from the mid-'80s that Gerald had kept running with baling wire and stubbornness. I finished my paperwork. I filed the bank's inspection report. In the section marked Notes, I wrote that I'd observed a person on the premises who left before I could make contact. Professional language, the kind that doesn't get you laughed at. But here is the part I haven't told anyone until now. When I got back to my shop that evening, I had a message on my answering machine. One message. I almost didn't think anything of it because my number was on the bank's paperwork, and sometimes people called with questions. But the timestamp on the machine showed the call had come in at 9:22 in the morning. I had been at the Harmon property since 9. The call would have come in while I was installing the front door lock. I hit play. There was a call connected. You could hear the line open. And then there was a sound that took me almost 30 seconds to identify. A lawnmower running, distant but clear, the steady drone of it, for exactly 41 seconds. And then it stopped. And in the 4 seconds of silence before the call dropped, I heard breathing. Slow, tired. The kind of breathing a man does when he's been working outside in cold air and has just stopped to rest. I called the phone company the next morning and asked them to trace the originating number on that call. The line showed as originating from the Harmon property on County Road G. That line had been disconnected by the bank 5 days before the call came in. The bank sent someone else to do the Thursday inspection. I told them I had a scheduling conflict. I rekeyed a lot of foreclosures after that, all over Fond du Lac County, for another 6 years before I retired the truck. I never went back out County Road G. I think about that coffee ring sometimes, the one Linda didn't clean up. I think she knew, on some level, that he wasn't finished yet. I fish the Milford Lake Reservoir most mornings before the sun clears the tree line. My name is Dale Pruitt. I'm 43 years old, and I've been doing this since I could hold a rod upright. I know the Kansas flatlands the way some people know their own handwriting, the smell of wet clay after a rain, the way the wind comes sideways off the plains and hits you before you hear it coming. I tell you this because I need you to understand. I'm not a man who spooks easy. I grew up practical. I stay practical. The Sunflower Wildlife and Nature Park opened a night tour program 2 summers ago. $18 a ticket, Friday and Saturday evenings. Small groups, flashlights provided. My neighbor Greta dragged me along the second week they ran it. She volunteers there on weekends, feeds the raptors, logs intake forms, that kind of thing. She said the park's education director, a woman named Dr. Lena Marsh, had been pushing for the night tours for years. Said nocturnal behavior was where the real science was. I figured it was a decent way to spend a Friday. The park is 40 minutes east of Salina, on a county road that turns to gravel the last 2 miles. Not much out there except flat land, power lines, and sky. The facility itself is modest, a main building with an administrative wing, then a trail system looping through maybe 8 outdoor habitats. Elk, bison, great horned owls, a pair of mountain lions in an enclosure with a deep stone moat, that kind of thing. We checked in at 7:40. The tour guide was a young guy named Marcus, maybe 22. Wore a khaki vest with the park logo on the chest. 9 people in the group total. We got our flashlights, little yellow energizers, and Marcus walked us through the ground rules. Stay on the path. Don't tap the glass or the mesh. If an animal charges the enclosure fence, step back and don't run. The first 40 minutes were fine. Better than fine, actually. Watching the bison graze by moonlight was something I won't forget. They move like furniture that decided to breathe. The owls were out too, silent and enormous in the dark. I was glad Greta had pushed me into it. The reptile building is a long, low structure near the back of the trail, just before the path loops toward the mountain lion enclosure. It's climate controlled. You step in from the October cold, and the air hits you warm and close, smells like damp mulch and something faintly animal, like a pet store, but older. The lights inside are kept dim for the animals, purple-tinted UV strips running along the top of each tank. The building has a central corridor with display tanks on both sides, and then a smaller branching hallway to the left that goes to a staff area, storage, a sink, a small desk. There's also a mirror on the wall at the T-junction of that branch, full length in a plain metal frame. Greta told me later they put it there for kids, something about making the hallway feel bigger. I was near the back of the group. Marcus was up front explaining a king snake. I glanced left down the branch hallway, the way you do when something moves in your peripheral vision. I don't know that anything actually moved. But I looked. The mirror was maybe 30 feet down the hall. The UV light barely reached it. I could see myself in it, pale blue-gray, the way you look under those lights. And I could see the hallway behind my reflection, the way you'd expect. But there was a lag, not a big one. Maybe half a second, maybe less. I turned my head left, and the reflection turned left. But just a beat after, like a video call with bad signal. I blinked, looked again. Everything matched. I told myself the lighting was playing tricks, that the UV strips were causing some kind of visual flutter, and I went back to listening to Marcus talk about the king snake's heat pits. But I kept thinking about it on the walk to the mountain lion enclosure. The way the reflection had moved just slightly wrong, not dramatically wrong. That's what bothered me. It was small enough that I couldn't be sure. The mountain lions were pacing when we got there. Both of them, the male and the female, moving in opposite directions along the back wall of the enclosure. Marcus said that was unusual. Normally they'd be resting by this hour. He didn't seem concerned. He launched into facts about territorial range and hunting behavior. I watched the cats. The female stopped pacing. She sat down facing the observation deck where we were standing, and she looked directly at me. Not at the group. At me. I know how that sounds. Animals don't single people out like that. I know. But she stared at me for almost 2 full minutes, while Marcus kept talking, and I felt the skin on the back of my neck pull tight the way it does when the temperature drops fast. Then she looked to my left, past me, at something behind me. I turned around. There was nothing behind me but the gravel path and the dark prairie stretching out flat in every direction. The wind moved through the grass. A power line hummed a quarter-mile away. Nothing else. When I turned back, the female cat was pacing again. I pulled Greta aside after we moved on and asked her about Dr. Lena Marsh, the education director who designed the tours. I don't know why I thought of her specifically. Something about wanting to talk to whoever built this place, whoever decided how the lighting worked, where the mirror went. Greta's expression shifted. She said Dr. Marsh had left the facility. Quietly, she said. About 4 months ago. She said there had been something with patient files. She caught herself and said, animal intake files, logs, medical records for the animals. She said some of the records had gone missing. Not lost. Gone. Deliberately removed, she thought. The park's administration had done an internal review. No results announced. Dr. Marsh was just gone one Monday, and her office had been cleared over the weekend. I asked if Greta knew what the files were about. She shook her head, but she said something that I've turned over in my mind every day since. She said that in Dr. Marsh's last weeks, the doctor had started annotating the animal intake forms in the margins. Not medical notes, personal observations. Things like, reacts to stimuli before stimuli present. Does not orient toward sound source, orients toward observer. Reflection behavior inconsistent during feeding. Greta had seen one of the forms herself before they disappeared. We went back through the reptile building on the loop. The group was tired by then, quieter. Marcus was leading them out, and I was last again. I stopped at the T-junction, looked down the branch hallway. My flashlight was off. I'd clicked it off inside because the UV strips were enough. The mirror caught the purple light. I could see myself. I raised my right hand. The reflection raised its left, which is correct. That's how mirrors work. I knew that. That's what I told myself. But then I lowered my hand, and the reflection held its hand up for 3 full seconds before it followed. I didn't run. I want to be clear about that. I walked. Fast and deliberate. The way you move when something in your brain says that running will make it worse, that running will confirm something you don't want confirmed. I got out of the building, and I caught up with the group, and I did not look back. I went home and spent 2 hours trying to find Dr. Lena Marsh online. There's almost nothing. A faculty profile from a university in Lawrence that's been taken down. I found a cached version that just lists her department and a research focus in animal cognition and sensory perception. A single paper in a journal I'd never heard of, behind a paywall, from 6 years ago. The title was something about mirror self-recognition in non-primate species and anomalous response patterns. I couldn't read it. The park's own website has no mention of her name anywhere, not even in old news posts. Greta called me the following Tuesday. She'd been back to the park for her volunteer shift. She said the branch hallway in the reptile building was closed off now. A rope across the entrance. No explanation given. She said the mirror was gone. She said she'd asked the facilities manager about it, and he'd told her it was for a renovation. But when she checked the building permit board at the front office the way volunteers are allowed to, there was no permit filed. She also told me something Marcus had mentioned to the staff, apparently. That on the Friday night tour, our tour, he had counted 9 guests at check-in and 9 guests at the end. But in the mountain lion enclosure, standing on the observation deck, he had counted 10.